So welcome back, everybody. We are going to continue in chapter 31. We look forward to finishing chapter 31 today, Be'ezus Hashem. So the Alter Rebbe in the previous class mentioned that a person should not mix the two, which is not to leila arvev, not to mix the joy and elation of the soul with the melancholy of the body. In other words, the reason for his itzavon, for his sadness and bitterness, is because of the bodily and animalistic inclinations which he had, which always disturb, and then not to mix that with his simchas nefesh, the ability. He always has the Yid always has the chance at any given moment to take his soul and to return it, lashuv, tshuva, in this context, Alter Rebbe taish tshuva, to return it to its maker, in a way to unite it with its maker, the way it initially was before the person came down into this world. But through every Torah what a person learns, through every mitzvah that he does, he takes his neshama and he's meshivota, he returns it, he unites it with its creator. And you can imagine the great simcha, like it says, like a prince which was sitting in incarceration, imprisonment, and then comes out from its incarceration, from its imprisonment. There's no greater joy, and this is what really is happening. It's a prince, it's a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The neshama is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and when we have the ability to reunite the neshama with Hashem, with its source, there's no greater simcha. The problem is that the body doesn't lose, because we're dealing with the Beinin, not the Tzaddik. The body didn't lose its potency. The animalistic drives are still there. The bodily drives are still there. So apparently it's a mediocre type of joy. He says, don't mix the two. Now, we're saying this in a very in brief. The shir itself, the class itself, when we dealt with this Pedic, we dealt with this idea what Alter Rebbe is conveying, especially in towards the end of the last class. Alter Rebbe elaborates on this point. Again, it's all in expansion and elaboration in the previous class, which could be seen in the koshertuba.com, which we're privileged that this is that hosts this Tanya shir. You could all, in the link box, you could always see Tanya, and it has all the previous classes. But as we mentioned time and again, for newcomers who are looking at, or who are watching this shir the first time, there is a separate website. Again, this is all with the same kosher too, but it's a separate website which is established for the Tanya itself. Again, the advantage, it's only Tanya, and namely it has the text that one could see or could follow the class together with following the text. It's on tanyaonline.com, usually updated within hours after the class is posted. So this is where we're holding by the dot, and again on page 80 in the original text, V'hine b'china zu. And this above mentioned level is b'chinas Yitzias Mitzrayim. This is the notion of the Exodus of Egypt, which it says there, Ki Baruch Ha'am, when Torah elaborates, or Torah, when Torah illustrates, is the word we're looking for. Torah illustrates how the Jewish people left Egypt. It doesn't say they left with honor. It doesn't say they were led out of Egypt, but it says they ran away from Egypt, they escaped from Egypt, which doesn't sound very, if you're dealing right, no, but not only dignified, it's not only a lack of this sense of dignity, the way the Jewish people went out. Apparently, where's the whole koyach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the strength and the miraculous conduct of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which was in total state of manifestation, and this whole experience of the Exodus of Egypt, the 10 plagues, everything was ran over the rules of nature, in order, which is again, in order that the Jewish people should ultimately leave Mitzrayim, and apparently, and again, it was a full conduct, it was a full manifestation of the miraculous conduct of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's the conduct of nature and the conduct of miracle, which both come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the same God. But in the time of Yitzias Mitzrayim, the koach, the force of the conduct, the miraculous conduct, the energy of the miraculous conduct of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was in full state of revelation, manifestation. So you brought the plagues, and in the end, how did the Jewish people have to run out? How did they leave? They had to run. It doesn't show. It's like, people sometimes, if someone in a battle, in a wrestle between two people. Again, let's think about this conceptually, theoretically. We shouldn't wrestle, we shouldn't fight. But sometimes again, when you're thinking about something theoretically, when you think about the notion of wrestle, one gives somebody, for example, he gives him a hard knock, but a moment later he's running away. It doesn't seem so much that it doesn't demonstrate so clearly his victory. If you're really mighty and you feel you triumph and you won and you're a winner in this battle, in this wrestle, you stand put to your place and you knock the other person down until he's completely humiliated, and you walk away with dignity. And apparently, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu crushed Parei and he crushed the oppressors, and then he took his own lovely, and his own nation, his own children, how much he loved so much, and he liked so much, and he loved so much, and he was so and a nation which is so affectionate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And vice versa. To establish such an important relationship with his own children. In other words, he took them out. He reunited with his nation, with Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Apparently, you crush Parei. So, at least when the time of the Yidden Jewish people leaving Mitzrayim, it should have been with honor and dignity. If you're God, take them out with pride, with dignity, with honor. What's this kibbutz? They ran away. And the Alter Rebbe is basically going to say, we'll just say this orally, I'll read it inside. The Rebbe is basically going to say that they weren't running away from the Egyptians. The Egyptians really sent them out, and they were very, very determined that they should leave. To the extent it says that they really chased them out, means to say, no, leave, and they gave them also from their possessions, and they found favor in the eyes of the Egyptians to not only leave, but leave with zav, chesed, with gold and silver and smolis, like it says. All they opened up their wealth for the Jewish people, and they should leave again not only with just empty-handed, but they should leave with wealth, great wealth. Rechush gadol, it says, with great possessions, great wealth. So that was really the state from the perspective of the Egyptians. Baruch ha'am means that the Jewish people really ran away from themselves. What does it mean running away from themselves? Running away from themselves means to say there was two dimensions over here. You took the Jew out of Egypt, and then there was another whole dimension within redemption, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only wanted to take the Jew out of Egypt, but there was a point to take Egypt out of the Jew. Because they were so sunk into the cult, the Egyptian culture, which are not known to be particularly moral, in different areas. In different areas, again, this is based on the Talmud and based on the Psukim and Tanakh and so on. So when Jewish people lived in that culture, even though they guarded certain areas and certain important areas for that matter, the Torah testifies also in their names, in their language, in their garments, they were distinct. They kept their distinction as Jewish people, but yet they were mushka, they were very much sunk in, and it says they were sunk into the 49 gates of impurity, to the extent that if they were with one more moment in exile, not necessarily they would have been successful to leave Egypt, which means they would have been a little deeper, one more little bit sunk into another level of impurity. God forbid, it would have been questionable if they would ever be able to come out, because in the end of the day they were influenced by the Egyptian culture, and it was one thing of taking the Jew out of Egypt, and there was a whole other dimension of taking Egypt out of the Jew, rinsing his pure neshama, and from the influences. It says that the Egyptians not only did bad to us, they tried to make us, they tried to influence, they tried to convert. They tried to reform our whole way of thinking in an edel, in a refined way, as Yidden and so on, as Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So, it was a whole new dimension, again, of taking this rinsing, of extracting the negativism which has been accumulated in Egypt. And how did it manifest? How it manifested, and again, with this we can understand what the Baruch Ha'am is, that the neshama, there was the neshama, and then there was the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul, which was very much sunk into the Egyptian culture. Hence, the animalistic dimension of it was very potent. Or the Nefesh Bahamis stood in its full state of potency and state of behemothickeit, when it was the animalistic drive and force. It was very much in a state of expression, a state of manifestation, a state of expression. So when you have that, and on the other hand you have the Nefesh Elikis saying, "Oh, I probably I should identify with this new chapter in my life as an individual. A new chapter is my life as part of Am Yisrael. That we're a redeemed people. Our Nefesh Elikis, our godly soul, is able to rise to the occasion, or rise to the surface, and then start exercising with our godly soul all these new godly realities, starting from Matan Torah, which was the first time that the Jewish neshama was completely exposed to its source, to its sherish and moker, to its source, and to its root, which is again Kodesh Baruch Hu himself, which came via the Torah. Nechi Hashem Elokeichem, panim bepanim diber Hashem Elokeichem, diber Hashem Elokecha imochem. Hashem spoke to the Jew face to face, because his whole neshama was able to tune into its sherish and moker, its own roots, which is again Kodesh Baruch Hu via the Torah. And from then they would journey in the desert, and listening and learning and growing, knowing and growing and learning and experiencing more and more of this godly reality till they would come into Eretz Yisrael and so on. But when they left Egypt, and it says for that matter, that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not give them the Torah right when they left Egypt, right after Kriyas Yamsuf, because what did Hashem have to wait 49 days? Take them out of Egypt. The objective of Egypt, of the exodus of Egypt, is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu. When you leave Egypt and you exodus Egypt, what's the objective? What's the goal? Serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu on this mountain, which is Mount Torah. So Hashem should have taken them out of Egypt, across the Kriyas Yam, so with all the revelations which was associated with that, associated with that experience, and then the next day or the next 2 days, head towards Mount Torah. I mean, it's a 6-day preparation, so it's again in the spirit of Mount Torah, and they give the Torah. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wait 49 days? So it says in so many places that because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was obvious that you took the Jew out of Egypt, but still there was the Egyptian influence, which was still so potent in the system of the Yid, and that was an interference for the Yid to receive the Torah. So when the Jew is leaving Egypt, at that point there's a certain confusion, because the Nefesh Bahamis stands in its full state of manifestation, its full state of expression and potency, and therefore the person, the Yid, knows there's the conflict. They know that probably the right thing is to leave Egypt, to head towards Matan Torah, to focus on the goal, focus on the objective. But in the same token, because the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul, was so stood in with all its kayach, with all its strength, with all its energy. And again, when the Nefesh Bahamis stands with all the strength and all the energy, it's all about animal, with animalistic drives and desires and so on, which in that sense it wants to go back to Egypt. If not physically, but at least it's not ready yet to leave the Egyptian experience, or the Egyptian culture, or the Egyptian way of life, and to drop everything to head to Matan Torah. But on the other hand, they still knew that they were conscious about this idea that the right thing is probably to go to Matan Torah. In other words, in their conscious mind, they were able to develop that focus, or to maintain that focus. The right place is to move on, to head towards Matan Torah. In the same token, the Nefesh Bahamis was so strong, and it carried, and its energy was so full of energy, so full of the animalistic energy which exists in Nefesh Bahamis. So kiborach, they were going to run away from themselves. Like, it's translated. And that's what the Torah says. It's not from the perspective of Egypt or HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu took them out of Egypt. Because they did go out with honor and dignity. But in their own mind, kiborach ha'am, they were running away from themselves because there was something within them which wants to remain animal. Because again, that's what the Nefesh Bahamis tells the person. It's all about indulging in the physical and giving in to your animalistic temptations, your animalistic lusts, your animalistic covets, your animalistic inclination. That's what you're all about. The Nefesh Elikis, conversely, is saying you have a godly soul. Your godly soul is a part of God. Exercise that. Allow the godly reality to resonate within you. Eject the physical, eject from the animalistic. You're a human being, you're a holy person, you're a Yid, Mamlechas Kenim V'Gei Kodesh, you're a nation of priests, a nation of kings. So you don't belong in the pit, in the animalistic experiences, or the indulgence in animalistic experiences. But at the time the Yidden left Mitzrayim, the Nefesh Bahamis was so potent, was so full of its energy was not diffused in the outset. So Kiborach, they were running away from themselves. The Nefesh Elikis was running one direction, and the Nefesh Bahamis, they said, okay, you know what, you're not refined yet. You're not ready for it yet, but we got to go. So they were running away from themselves. And again, in Avodas Hashem, it says a number of times that sometimes the person elevates himself. He stands in a level of, in a state of transcendency that he understands. He appreciates that it doesn't make sense to give into that taiva, to this taiva or that taiva, may it be in thought, speech, and action, or eating, or whatever it is. He's elevated, he's uplifted. And sometimes we have these moments in our life that we stand in a sense that it's something which is totally animalistic, without any godly purpose, is somewhat abhorrent in our eyes, somewhat disgust in our own eyes. But not always it's like that. And that's usually the level of the tzaddik. Because everything about the tzaddik stands in a state of elevation and transcendency. But by the average person, it's more, as the Lashon in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's iskafia versus ishapcha. Iskafia means I subdue. I still have the temptation, which is Al Tereb, if you really want to say this is really the overall, the life of the Beinani. The Nefesh Bahamis Nitzahar is still there, and with its original state of the way it was born, the way it was created, with its original strength. But the person, the Nefesh Bahamis never gives in. The fact that you say never gives in means to say the signals are flowing very strongly and trying to convince the person to think, speak, or do contrary to Ratzon Hashem. But it's avodah v'iskafia. You're bending, you're running away from yourself. You have the taiva, you do have the temptation, you do have that covet, you have that lust to do so, or to think so, or to look there and speak that, or do that, but nonetheless you know that it's the wrong thing, and therefore you will subdue that taiva, that temptation, and you will go ahead and do the right. I mean, to say that you will not look there, you will not listen to that, you will not do that, you will not speak that, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says not to. And conversely, in Mitzvah say, even the Nefesh Bahamis says many times, lay back, don't do that, you don't need to, don't rush, and don't make a point of it. And so, but you overcome it. That's iskafia. That's the avodah baruch ha'am. You subdue the Yetzer Hara, not the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara has not yet been transformed to an ally, and therefore it's an avodah baruch, which means you're basically running from yourself. You're subduing, as opposed to you transformed, you transmuted the Nefesh Bahamis. That's the difference of barach, again, iskafia, subduing, as opposed to ishapcha, which is again transformation. And that's what he says inside. And he says l'chayda tamua. And this is ki barach ha'am. L'chayda tamua. Apparently, it's a wonder. Why did it have to be in a way of Jewish people running away? Also, this whole idea that Moshe Rabbeinu tells Parei. Again, there's different ways how I've seen this line being translated. In a way, it's like Moshe Rabbeinu had to tell Parei that we're going out for 3 days in the desert. Tell Parei as it is. We're leaving Egypt. Why did it have to be in such a way that there's this back and forth, go and you're coming back? And he says, but if they would tell Parei that this is a done deal, in other words, they're going to be free forever, Parei would not have been compelled to send them. He wasn't even in agreement to send them for 3 days till he was stricken with the makas. He was struck with the makas. Then he let loose, and in other words, he loosened up and he let them go. And if they would tell Parei that it's forever, not for 3 days, he wouldn't have to let them go. He'd also be compelled to let them go. So that's a simple way of learning this line. But namely, this is in other words, weren't they full control over Parei? Why did they have to be kibarach? Why did they have to run away? The answer is because, in other words, in the end of the day, they're running away from themselves. Meaning to say, because the evil which existed in the souls of the Jewish people, it was still stood with its strength and potency in the left side of the heart. Again, we mentioned many times, this is where the main station and where the nefesh bahamis, the animal soul, the Yitzhahara, is situated. Because there's zuhama, which means that venom, that impurity, which we spoke about again, I believe last week we spoke about it in the very beginning of creation, by the nachash, which infused in Chava. This zuhama, this impure, with impure energy, which that's the reason why we have so many times as human beings, usually as human beings, we're so inclined, we're so bent, so naturally, in so many areas, to do the wrong, to speak the wrong, to think the wrong, and so on. But it says, when the Jewish people left Egypt, when it came out in Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu sucked out that zuhama, that impurity. So till then, when they came to Egypt, till they came to Matan Torah, that zuhama, in other words, that impure energy and force, did not leave them till Matan Torah. The only thing is, so they have this zuhama, they have the nefesh bahamis, animal soul, which is full, which means it's expression, it's animalistic expression in its full state of manifestation, and namely, as a people, as human beings, they still carry that zuhama, they still carry that impurity, which came about from the very beginning of creation, and that was supposed to be taken away from them, diffused by Matan Torah. And here you're dealing with the Jewish people when they exited Egypt, which was prior to Matan Torah. So they still had that zuma, they still had that impure, that extra dosage, or that innate impurity, which came about via their initially, again, as mashcha de chavi, like it says in Zayed, again, based on the negative energy of the snake, is called the skin of the snake, which was attached to them, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu by Matan Torah took it away from them. But here you're dealing with the Jewish people in the very beginning, the outset, when they left Egypt before Matan Torah, so they still had this zuhama, the impurity. So that was on one side of the coin. In other words, one part of them, and nefesh bahamis, an animal soul, which is in its full state of expression, in its full potency, in its full strength. On the other hand, you have a godly soul who knows that's probably the right place to go. Matan Torah, leave Egypt, rinse ourselves from the Egypt from within, and let's focus on Matan Torah. So basically, they're kind of Baruch Ham, they're running away from their own self, from the Nefesh Bahamis, their own animal soul, which stood in its full strength at the time, especially with that Zuama, their Akmagamasam, their goal, their aspiration, and their desire, that the godly soul should leave the Golos of Sitra Achra, they'll leave the Golos of the impure forces, which is Tumas Mitzrayim, the impurity of Egypt, which is again towards Matan Torah. And that's what Kibarach, again, they're running away from their own self in this case, which means from the Nefesh Bahamis, Yitzhahara, which stood so strongly at the time. And that's why the Lashon is Barach, it was focus. Subdue, in other words, I know what the other side, the other part which I have within me. And again, that's tantamount to what we learned last week, that the Beinoni doesn't mix the two feelings, the two expressions. In one hand, he knows that he did not rid the Nefesh Bahamis, his animal soul. He didn't get rid of his Yitzhahara, because that's basically the BAYT of the Tzaddik. His Nefesh Bahamis stands with his full strength. But on the other hand, he knows that tshuva, he could return, he could take his neshama and unite it with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through every every part of Torah that he learns, and every mitzvah he does. If you remember, the Alter Rebbe taught so beautifully, tshuva ma'asim tevim kol yoma b'tshuva, and the lashon tshuva ma'asim tevim, that even though the simple meaning is it's about repentance, but the Alter Rebbe taught tshuva ma'asim tevim, another pirush of tshuva ma'asim tevim, that every good deed, every mitzvah he does, and every part of Torah that he learns, tshuva, the soul is returning to its source, like the prince is coming back home. Yet, on the other hand, we said those who were captured, the captures of the prince are standing in every single corner and ready to jump the prince. The wise prince, and together with himself, or the people who rescued him, and together with the king, they're able to divide the two experiences. When I'm together in the king's palace, when I'm together with my father, the king, especially when I secure that presence of myself to be again with my father, the king, that's a time of elation. The fact that there's so many people who want to interfere with that, and they want to capture me again, I'm wise enough to stand beyond, and it says, well, that's a problem on its own, and there's times to be sad about it, and it's pretty sad that there's someone you're always vulnerable to be caught. But in the same token, I will not mix. I'll try firstly to secure on a constant basis, as much as I can, my presence with my father, the king. And that again, in the nimshul, this is the mashal, the parable. The nimshul means that I'd be able to constantly, whenever I want, I could learn more Torah. And I always try to utilize every opportunity to do another mitzvah. And again, tshuva, maisim tevim, this is the maisim tevim, which returns the neshama to the bosom of its father, which is again HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is the source of the neshama itself. And I'm learned not to mix the two, to be able to separate the two, not to mix this sadness which a person can and should periodically point out the vulnerability of his nefesh elikis, that it always has this challenge of the nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul, which always wants to taint it and always wants to disturb this elation and joy of its unity with its father, the king, which is again with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's times for that a person has to demonstrate, like we learned in the past, the broken heart and broken soul, the leiv nishba v'nitke, but try to separate the two, to allow the simchas hanefesh, the joy and elation of the nefesh, as well. And again, despite the fact that you did not conquer, you didn't transform the nefesh habahamis, and it's always there, and it's always ready to make more trouble. But be wise to separate the two, and that's what he says. Ki barach ha'am. They were wise enough to know that despite the Egypt within us has not left, yet we are going to stay focused. We know that's where our sources, and that's where our glik, our luck, and that's where all the lichtigkeit, the light, the true ecstasy and true sensation of life is by Matan Torah. And they were barach, they were able to stand focused and know, despite that they have that potent nefesh bahamis and yetzer hara, together with the zuhama, barach ha'am, they had their eyes and focused on the goal. And with this we can understand the different psukim of David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Hashem uzi ma'uzi, that it's not always that all about me. In other words, not at every single opportunity I stand in a state that it's just me and God and there's nothing else disturbing. He says, Hashem uzi ma'uzi, Hashem is my strength. There's times that it's days of pain, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the place that I run away, my runaway place, the place where I run away from days of pain. And again, may it be physical pain or spiritual pain, I know that manusi, I have a place to run, I have a city of refuge, and I have a state of refuge that I could connect to, which in this case, which is the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Mizgabi manusi, which is another pasuk. It says He's my strength and He's my place where I run to. Another pasuk, v'humonesli. You're running. Why is the lashon running? When everything is good, everything is tranquil, you don't have to run. When the child is at home and there's no threats, he doesn't have to run into his father's. He's in the presence of his father all the time. When you say run away or escape, this l'shein is manusi or manisli, means to say there's certain times that you're running because you know that there's another side which is interfering and disturbing this unity which you're in a neshama with your Father in heaven, with the King which is your source, the King which is your root. In other words, the unity, the essential unity of the neshama, which is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. With HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there is forces and energy which want to interfere with that, and do interfere. But manusi, I know about it, and I know it's a yem tzara. I know it's painful, and I know it's me'ik, means to say it oppresses and it bothers and it hurts, and again, especially in the life of the Beinoni, that it is a situation. It's possible that he'll live all his life like a Beinoni, as a Beinoni, because Baruch Hu doesn't decide to upgrade him to the level of a tzaddik. Again, like we elaborated in the past, that it's about matan, it's about HaKadosh Baruch Hu deciding that he is going to be a tzaddik. But if not, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't decide he's going to be a tzaddik. Uli lekach nivra, like we learned in the previous chapter, there could be all his life a Beinoni, and if he's all life a Beinoni, the nefesh bahamis all his life stands in its full strength. It's never weakened. It's never weakened. There's always tsar, and there's always a state, and I always feel vulnerable. And therefore, I know that via my learning Torah, via my doing mitzvahs, is mones. I have a place, I have an area to escape and to connect to my source, which is God Himself. Like the prince has the ability to connect, to leave the imprisonment, leave the state of incarceration, and connect with his father, the king. But you still use the lashon mones, because it's always because you're dealing with someone who has an nefesh bahamis and Yetzer hara, and therefore he has to escape. He has to find the place, and he has to stay focused in order to find comfort. It's true, again, sense of comfort. It's true sense of true divine ecstasy, which is again in the bosom of a father. In this case, the connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, which comes through learning Torah mitzvahs, but it's menusi. And therefore, it says, when Mashiach comes, and the spirit of impurity is going to be completely eradicated from the world. What does it say there? It's so interesting. It's so beautiful. There's a pasuk in Tanakh which illustrates the time of Mashiach. It's an expression which is diametrically opposite than the terms used when the Jewish people went out of Egypt. There it says Ki barach ha'am, and here it says of the Menusa leise lecha. You're not going to go in haste. You're not going to go in a way you're going to run. Ki hoilich lifnechem Hashem, because God is going ahead of you, or another pirush lifnechem, your whole pnimis. Everything about you is going to be God and godly, because what's going to happen with the Nefesh Bahamas? What's going to happen with the Yetzer hara? It says HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to shech the Yetzer hara. What does it mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to get rid of the Yetzer hara. He's going to eradicate, obliterate the Yetzer hara. What does it mean? Where do we find it? And where do we find it? Which pasuk do we find it? What is the source of the Yetzer hara? It's a source of impurity. It's all about impurity. And what is it going to be when Mashiach is going to come? As Hashem says, I'm going to eradicate, I'm going to obliterate the spirit of impurity from this world. So there's not going to be the Yetzer hara, not going to be the Nefesh Bahamas. The Jew, the Yid, together with him the entire world. Godliness is going to be is going to be so natural. It's going to be the most natural state. The godly experience is going to be the most natural state by the entire world, and by the Yid in particular. So you're not running away from anything. You don't feel vulnerable that another force, another energy is trying to charge you and to interfere with your with your unity with your Father in heaven, again via Torah mitzvahs. With your comfort of that unity, there's no one interfering. Because what interferes? The Seir Shabbisa, which is the Nefesh Bahamis, the Yetzer hara, which is associated, which is a purity, just an extension of the forces of impurity. But when Mashiach is going to come, the forces of impurity are not going to be there. Hashem says, Avir, I'm going to take them away. So therefore the source of the Nefesh Bahamis, the source of the Yetzer hara, is going to be melted away and obliterated. So the Yetzer hara is not going to be there. The Nefesh Bahamis is not going to be there. So we're not running. We're not running. It's going to be more like we said in the two terms, hishapcha, a transformation. The Nefesh Bahamis will be completely transformed, transmuted to godliness. So we're not running. So BAYT, Mitzrayim, which was in the beginning of this journey, when the Nefesh Bahamis, when anything which is associated with the Yetzer hara and the Nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul, and everything associated with the Yetzer hara and animals, in other words, the impure energy was so strong and so potent. So the Yid, knowing that he has on the other side, Zelu Mazer, he has namely the Nefesh Lakis as a Yid, so he had to stay focused, and he had to know, and he had to make a decision. Borach, I'm running, I'm going to Matan Torah. But I'm always vulnerable. There's always a state. My whole Aveda is under threat on a constant basis. But I am a focused Yid, and I'm able not to mix the two together, and able to be Samech, Simchas HaNefesh, the joy and elation of the soul, and its connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu via Torah mitzvahs. Ki Barach, I'm able to do that so perfectly. But in the same token, it's Barach. When Mashiach will come, there will be Yetzer hara, there will be Nefesh Bahamis. We're not running anywhere. Godliness has become the most natural state of the Jew, over the entire world for that matter. We'll be able to see face to face, eye to eye with God. And God will resonate, and God will pervade the entire reality. It says even, the basar Even the physical flesh, not only neshamis would be introduced to godliness, even our eyes, our physical eyes will be introduced to the godly reality, and more so our physical flesh. Chassidus explains and emphasizes that when the pasuk says basar, there's an important message over here, that it's our connection to godliness will not only be from the perspective of our neshamis and the basar, our flesh wants something totally different and perhaps antithetical, and the antithesis rather of what our nefesh wants. That's a state of galus. The verok kol basar yachta means the flesh itself is going to be part of his godly experience, because there's no ruach hatumah. So that no ruach hatumah is not baruch anymore. Over and you're not going in haste. We're going to stop over here. Like I say, the Beth Hashem, I thought we'd be able to finish up the Peirik this week. But will Beth Hashem be able, God willing, to finish up in the next class? But in this case, again, we stop over here by the two dots of because HaKadosh Baruch Hu walks together with you, or in front of you, or Lipneichem also has the connotation Lipnimiyuschem, because everything about the Yid, 100% about the experience of the human being and the entire world, and particularly the Yid, is about Hashem, about God and godliness. Have a wonderful night.